Welcome back to the Lap Podcast. I am your host, Tristan Rines, hosting your Destination Formula One podcast. We are following the Mexico City Grand Prix weekend where the championship order has changed. But before we get started, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. It helps support the channel. It costs you absolutely $0.00. Costs you nothing to help support the channel. We're at the 84 subscriber mark. You could be TLP number 85. We're so close to 100. That's the goal before the end of this season. You can get us that much closer by sharing us with your friends, your colleagues, any other Formula One fans in your life that you know of. Feel free to share the content. It's just me this weekend. No khaki Kevin Walker this time, but we're looking forward to his return. He's got a lot of stuff going on in his life. So, give him your best wishes. Let him know down in the comments below that you miss him. But we're going to move on with this thing. We got a lot to talk about following Mexico City. But first and foremost, the change at the top of the order. Oscar Piastri now 1 point behind his teammate in the same car, in the same garage in Lando Norris. 357 points for Norris, 356 for Oscar Piastri following Mexico City. A swing in the championship order that has kind of been building to this point. We've seen the stage being set. We've seen the performances that have led up to this point. And after a strong start to this season by the Australian driver, it's all seemingly come undone for Oscar Piastri since the Netherlands. He now trails the World Drivers' Championship, like I said, by a single point. So, in a nutshell, in a question, what has gone wrong for Oscar? Simple, straightforward answer: missed opportunities and mistakes. I think he's started to begin to crack under the pressure. And since the Dutch GP, his last, trip to the top step of the podium, Oscar's finished behind Lando Norris. He's finished behind him in 5 consecutive Sundays when he's absolutely needed to take this championship by the reins. Arguments can be made about whether McLaren's pit wall should have given him a position back in Singapore. But even looking back on that moment, it was a hard racing move by Lando Norris that, honestly, if Oscar Piastri pulls off, I said this a couple weeks ago, if Oscar Piastri does the same thing, I think F1 fans online, F1 fans in general, would probably look at it more kindly. They talk about that move as a ruthless, gotta have it attitude sort of move by Oscar Piastri. But Lando Norris, of course, doesn't quite have that favorability within the community. On this podcast, khaki Kevin Walker, huge Lando Norris fan. But to give Lando his roses, I mean, he's really done a good job. But I think Oscar has allowed his emotions to kind of get in the way a little bit. I think he's kind of clouded, and he's been looking to the McLaren pit wall to hand him back positions, to do him that favor, to really, let McLaren make the decision for the team. He's led all the way up to this point, and it feels like the decision-making from the pit wall has started to kind of creep in. The seeds of doubt have begun to be sown, and I think Oscar's kind of succumbed to that pressure. And at this point, it seems like those doubts really have crept in. And now with the final stretch of the year here, I think Oscar, of course, has run out of that points cushion, but he's run out of the cushion of domination. He's run out of top-end performances. He's run out of, putting together strong qualifyings and then transforming them into race wins and podium performances. And this stage of the season, I think it's really going to be a massive challenge for him to bring this thing back. He's going to have to likely watch his teammate run away with his shot. And it's reinforcing what I've said for a few weeks now, that Oscar really does need to refocus and regain the form that we saw of him for most of this season. Oscar at the moment just seems to be floundering, and championships create pressure. Having Max Verstappen competing with you at the front, that creates pressure. Having your teammate in the same car as you, that creates pressure. Up until this point of the season, up until Azerbaijan, a huge opportunity for Oscar Piastri to really capitalize off of a 40-something point gap ahead of Lando, with Lando's DNF in the Netherlands. the race wins swinging Oscar's way. We walked out of that podcast, we walked out of that weekend, I think, as an entire community, the TLPs, Formula One fans around the world, going, this championship's over, it's done and dusted. Oscar hasn't lost a step all year. Lando Norris just had the worst thing happen to him that could have possibly happened to him this year at the worst possible time. But, you know, what Lando has done on his side of the garage, he's done his job and he's picked up the pieces. You can only control what you can control in any sport, in anything in life, right? And Lando Norris deserves some kudos for doing the damn job. I mean, at this point, Lando looked really poised to run away with this thing. Lando also walking into this final stint of the year, these final 4 race weekends, he's won the Brazil Sprint as recent as last year. He finished ahead of Oscar in the Brazil feature race, even in some absolutely blitzing rain and torrid conditions last year. Finished ahead of Oscar in Vegas. He could have won the Qatar Sprint, but he handed it to Oscar as a favor. Outqualified Piastri in Qatar last year. He only finished behind due to a penalty, and then went on to win in Abu Dhabi to seal McLaren's championship. The season's had its ebbs and flows all year. Outside of 2 DNFs, Lando really has, if you look back at all the results, he's had a really strong season up to this point as well. And he does deserve credit for not just throwing in the towel when Piastri took a huge gap in the Netherlands. He's remained in the picture the whole way. And where his opponent has floundered, he stayed right there in the rear view to close in and take this lead on merit. With the signature performance of Lando's season up to this point, Mexico City, winning the race by the largest margin that we've seen all season. I think it was over 30 seconds. The McLaren was hooked up. Lando Norris, who had performed here last year well enough to land a podium, he really just took it. He saw an opportunity and took it. He controlled what he could control. All the clean air out in front, didn't make any mistakes. It seems like Lando mentally has calmed down. Where we criticized him, and I was one of those people, I'm not going to back off of this, where I criticized him for the lack of mental fortitude that I gave the benefit to Oscar, it seems like things have kind of flipped. Maybe the noise has gotten closer to Oscar, whereas Lando at this point in the season is like, look, I'm just going to drive the car. I'm going to qualify. I'm going to do my best. And Lando historically has been a pretty strong qualifier. At the end of the day, where he's winning is on Saturdays. Oscar has lost out on that form that kept him right next to Lando or just in front of him. And with the history that we've seen here between these two, especially with a solid car underneath him as far back as last year, Oscar's really going to have to regain that form that we saw out of him at the beginning of the season, in the middle stint of this season. And unfortunately, things are just kind of falling away for him in this latter stage of the year where championships are won or lost. I think Oscar is starting to finally show some of that third year experience where first couple of years things were choppy. It was a big learning moment. He found 2.5 tenths, a quarter of a second in qualifying last year, but it seems like that level of qualifying pace, that pure race pace, especially now that the margins are a lot closer between the McLaren and the Red Bull that have continued to develop, Oscar's kind of cracked. It's happening. We're seeing it in front of our eyes. And it is kind of disappointing because you could argue about both of these drivers maybe not being the class of the field this year, just driving the class of the field car. But in all, this championship has really felt over and done. When Lando DNF'd in the Netherlands, we've now seen it come back full circle. Oscar's superb form, found time in qualifying, it's just diminished. The DNF in Azerbaijan, at the US Sprint, it swung the door wide open for Lando. And if he's not really careful, maybe even Oscar slips back to P3 because of the way that Red Bull and Max Verstappen have really been performing down the stretch. For this title battle to truly pick up and stay competitive the rest of the way. Again, because 1 point in an F1 championship at this stage it's almost like you're sitting at even. For this to really come back to being a competitive championship, the way that we've been hoping for all year, the way that as fans we've wanted all year, Oscar needs to find that raw pace that he had earlier in the season. He needs to find that excess in the qualifying. There are a couple of opportunities I think he does have. I mean, He has performed okay at Qatar. I think Abu Dhabi is a very solid racing circuit. Brazil, another one of those classic circuits. I think Vegas might be the point where both of the McLaren struggled. Last year, Mercedes were dominant there. I'm not going to chalk that up and say they're going to do the exact same this year. Of course, things, change. But, Vegas has been kind of an oddball so far while it's been on the calendar. But 3 of the next 4 are pure racing circuits on tracks. Oscar's got to find it at these more traditional circuits. I think he can. I think it's possible. Mark Webber, sitting in his corner telling him, yo, kid, you got to lock in. But it's not going to be easy the rest of the way. But he needs to find that mentality again. He needs to find that confidence that we saw out of him to begin the season. And Lando is not going to just sit by and allow it to happen. He's going to put forth his best foot. If you're Max Verstappen maybe in this picture too, is he still a factor? That's another question within all of this. Another weekend down, the title is trimmed to 36 points for Max. But where he sits at, doing the math and looking at the odds, he really cannot afford anything but wins from here on out. Anything less than maybe a sprint second or third place, but you have to win every single Grand Prix if you're Max Verstappen. So, Brazil, we still have a little bit of time to go, but Max is still in this picture. He's not going to stop competing. And he'd love to ruin someone's day and make this championship that much more exciting if he can win a race down the stretch that maybe makes things a little bit harder on Lando or Oscar. He'd love to do it. But at the end of the day, this championship is not over. It is not decided. It is not complete. We still have 4 Grand Prix weekends to go, 6 opportunities for points to be scored. But it's going to come down to Oscar. It's going to come down to the mentality. It's going to come down to showcasing that raw ability that made him a champion in Formula 3 and in Formula 2, that made him the belle of the ball, so to speak, that allowed McLaren to go, we're going to circumvent Alpine here. We're going to sign this Australian badass, and we're going to sort out all the details later. We're going to undercut our competition. We're going to go through whatever we need to go through, and we're going to bring this guy in. If you're Oscar, you got to find that confidence again. And I know it's challenging to do that at this stage, right? He just had a really rough Mexican Grand Prix, a place that he struggled at last year, mind you. He really did. Or had a solid recovery drive, and he had a good recovery drive on the Sunday, but you've got to refine that qualifying form. As you walk into this final chunk of the season, at this stage, where the door has kind of swung back in Lando's favor, you've got to prove to the F1 world that this is your championship. Now it's basically even. It's a 1-point lead for your opponent. Take it back. That's what you got to do if you're Oscar Piastri. If you're Lando Norris, keep on doing what you're doing. Drive consistently, take the opportunities, just basically mistake-free, and drive a little bit more aggressive. Because if you're in Lando Norris's shoes, you need to proverbially step on your opponent's throat, right? You need to take it. Same thing for Lando, the Papaya team. There have been questions and speculation that, Zach Brown and the team really have favor for Lando. That's all you can really do is speculate that. The Papaya rules decisions have made things a little bit muted as far as a true championship battle. I agree. Things have been optically, certainly feeling like they go in Lando's direction. But if you're Oscar, you got to ignore that. You got to ignore the Papaya rules. You got to go racing and take it. If you're Lando Norris, you got to prove everybody wrong and then go out there and be dominant. And if you're Max Verstappen, like I mentioned earlier, you got to go out there, spoil the party, and win everything. You run the table in this Red Bull, which, again, as long as Lauren Meckies and the team are putting things together, I think there's an opportunity there. But at the end of the day, it's between these 2 Papaya drivers. It's between the 2 McLarens at this stage of the championship, barring a double DNF or something of that nature. It's really their championship to lose. So as far as what you guys think, though, the TLPs, I want to know what you guys think. Has Oscar Piastri choked this title away? Is this really going to be Lando's championship to lose from here on out? Is Max Verstappen able to do the impossible? I want to know what the TLPs think down in the comments section below. I want to know what everybody else is thinking. What's the temperature feeling like for the rest of this community? I want to hear from you guys. Let me know down in the comments. Moving forward with what we got on the slate today, Ollie Bearman deserves some love. moving on from the championship fight, we got to talk about Ollie Bearman. I wanted to take a moment to really highlight how impressive Ollie Bearman was this past Sunday, how special he was this past Sunday, how special he really has been this season. And it was a really, really, really impressive performance from Ollie Bearman. Driving a Haas, starting P9, found himself one spot shy of a podium after the mess that was turn one in Mexico, the controversy that was leaving turn one in Mexico. If you ask George Russell, the conspiratorial levels of mismanagement that followed turn one. But nonetheless, Ollie Bearman found himself competing for double-digit points and performed excellently. He held up both Mercedes and eventually Oscar Piastri to earn Haas's best result since Roman Grosjean equaled it in Austria in 2018. And looking at Ollie's season with the P4, he's moved into 13th place, tied with Lance Stroll with 32 points on the season. For Haas, this is arguably, and not even arguably, this is their signature drive of the season. This moved them into 8th place in the Constructors Championship, 2 points ahead of Kick Sauber and just 7 points behind Aston Martin. So there's a little bit of something to play for in these final 4 races down the constructors' order. Obviously, there's that fight between Ferrari and Mercedes. It's only split by 1 point as well, which is totally worth a segment. We talked about that at length over the course of this season. I'm sure we're going to continue to talk about it. Maybe not today, but it will be talked about. As far as P6, P7 in this Constructors Championship, Haas now have something to play for. Racing Bulls, only 10 points ahead of them in the Constructors Championship, but a huge proponent of this, but a huge proponent of having the hope to maybe even net a P6 in the Constructors for Haas, not just P8, not just, eking past P9, is this weekend from Ollie Bearman. I mean, again, super impressive driving up there with the likes of Max Verstappen. He talked about it post-race, how, excited he was to be driving alongside one of his, effective heroes in Max and driving with the front of the field, driving with the class of Formula One up at the front, racing for something that really matters. Ollie performed excellently. And looking at his season, with this P4, like I said, 32 points on the season, moves him into a nice little spot on the Drivers' Championship. And Bearman's honestly pretty consistent this year. He's hovered around the points all year. In races that he's finished, he's averaged about 13th place. Across the last 6 Grand Prix Sundays, he's averaged 8th to 9th place. And he's been, at least as far as, the TLP, if you're a diehard TLP and you watch every episode, I've picked Ollie Bearman quite a number of times this season. And that's probably a good reason why I've maintained the lead I've had over Kevin when it comes to racing predictions, who's going to come in 10th place. Ollie Bearman's right there in the mix every single weekend. In a car that, again, right now is still just P8, was P9 prior to Mexico. He's keeping it around the points as a rookie, nonetheless. And I thought this might be a really good time to rank the rookies in my particular order, how I think they performed this season. And, Ollie Bearman, of course, being in this mix, the curiosity of where he falls in this. As far as 4 races to go, figured this might be a really good opportunity to kind of temp check this rookie class. You've got 5 rookies to go through. At the bottom of that list is Alpine's Franco Colapinto. He's outperformed Franco Colapinto handily. Colapinto still has 0 points on the year. He's only finished ahead of Gasly 5 times since re-entering the grid at Imola, and one of those times due to a Gasly DNF. He's improved quite a bit of late, but I wouldn't be shocked if Alpine decide to go in a different direction. They've still yet to confirm their second seat for 2026, which teaser we're going to be talking about. But Colapinto has not quite been up to snuff to Ollie Bearman this year. I mean, he had some impressive drives last year, which you can talk about a little bit more at length in a moment. But Franco Colapinto, probably the bottom of this rookie class. Gabriel Bortoleto, he's done a pretty bang-up job. He's sitting in 4th place for me among this rookie class. Pretty bang-up job this year in a Kick Sauber that last year was, if I'm not mistaken, dead last. He's driving effectively one of the worst cars, but he still found his way to 19 points. His run between Austria and Azerbaijan, the highlights of the year for this young Brazilian driver. And I'm sure he's going to want to put on a show in Brazil as we move forward into the next Grand Prix race weekend, November 9th, which should be a pretty exciting race. Brazil rarely ever disappoints. But Gabriel Bortoletto's been pretty solid. He's performed really well. He's got some nice qualifyings to hang his hat on. Unfortunately, I just don't think he's quite driving the car that's going to suit him to fight the way he wants to fight. Where there have been rumors circulating that Ferrari are keeping tabs on Gabriel Bortoletto, potentially his availability moving forward, as a longer term plan. Of course, Lewis Hamilton is not going to be around for forever. Charles Leclerc, his tenure, speculative at the moment, considering what Ferrari do beginning in 2026. But Gabriel Bortoletto, I mean, it's not to say that he and Franco Colapinto are like this. Gabriel Bortoletto is driving fantastically this year. 19 points in a Sauber is still pretty damn impressive. At number 3, this is where I slot Ollie. He's arguably, again, one of the most consistent rookies this season in terms of results. As I've detailed, he's had his moments with a pair of DNFs, and he is likely limited by what he's driving, to be completely fair. Do I think that if he was maybe driving the Red Bull right now, he'd probably be driving better than Yuki? Yeah, probably. But I don't know how many more mistakes he probably would have made. It's really hard to compare rookies to, world championship level drivers. But Ollie Bearman is driving incredibly well, stacking up very nicely against, Esteban Ocon. He's actually ahead of him in the Drivers' Championship standings by 2 points. Again, a super crucial weekend for him in Mexico to help build that gap up over his teammate. And Ocon is a race winner in his past, won in Hungary years ago when he was with Alpine, and is a very savvy veteran point-scoring driver. So, outperforming Esteban Ocon your rookie season, even up to this point in the season, with an outlier result in Mexico, there's something to hang your hat on. This is the race that this rookie gets to hang his hat on for this season. Likewise, talking about these next 2 rookies, Kimi Antonelli, my second ranked rookie of 2025. He's regained his pre-European form. Of late, he's been really strong in terms of results. P4 in Baku, P5 in Singapore, a likely points finish in the United States, if not for an incident with Carlos Sainz, P6 in Mexico. Early in the year, his highlights were terrific in grabbing P3 in Canada, sprint pole in Miami. And look, having the best car underneath him in terms of what the rookies are driving, there's certainly been low points as well. Europe was definitely a struggle, but he had his moments. I've talked about this at length. Mercedes have also not necessarily been perfect this year either. They certainly had plenty of moments during the European stint as well. Terrible setups or bad strategy calls and incidents that were out of his control, like a crash in Great Britain. From beginning to end, though, Kimi Antonelli has shown that he's deserving of the spot. Obviously, I'm a fan of his. I think he's been terrific this season, all things considered. Now that he's got the confidence back, too, especially, he's looked really good, like he belongs. And right now, he's helping Mercedes fight for P2 in the Constructors as a rookie. He's basically the decider at this point between whether or not Ferrari are going to get a P2 Constructors finish or not. What he's done this year has been pretty impressive, especially with all the pressure on his shoulders, albeit. And number 1, Isaac Hadjar. He's sitting 10th place currently in the Drivers' Championship as a rookie in a V car, been a racing bull. Hadjar has been terrific this year, and I think he's exceeded expectations of everybody by a country mile. I certainly didn't know what to expect of him. I thought that he was arguably going to be one of the rougher rookies going into this season for sure, going all the way back to when the season was beginning back in March. And he's exceeded expectations. I'm happy to have been wrong about this. His podium in the Netherlands was absolutely the high point for him this season. For certain, one of the highlight moments of this year where we've seen a lot of different podium sitters. Carlos Sainz and Williams, Nico Hülkenberg, Kimi Antonelli, rookie in Canada, like I had mentioned earlier. We've seen a lot of really highlight moments this year when it comes to podiums. Isaac Hadjar is ranking right up there with them. And even beyond that, he's driven incredibly consistently over the course of this season, hovering in the points as well as putting together some terrific qualifying performances. One of the most consistently Q3 sitting qualifiers of the season. A rookie and a racing bull if I came to you preseason and said that was going to happen, you'd think I was full of beans. So all in all, Ollie is still special. Ollie has been performing fantastically. This is just a really fun and interesting rookie crop that we've had this year. It's hard to break through given that he is driving this gritty Haas. But I want to know what the TLPs think. Who are your favorite rookies this year? Rank them 1 to 5. How would you rank them? Let us know down in the comments below. I'm really curious to see what the TLPs think on this because it's been a really fun year. I feel like we've gotten a lot from these rookies. I really feel like we have. I mean, Colapinto is the only one who hasn't scored points, but all these rookies so far outside of even that have been strong performers, have done a lot. There have been a lot of storylines surrounding teams that are centered around some of these rookies. And Ollie Bearman, again, it's like here's 5 for me, and then it's 4, 3, 2, and then 1. You know what I mean? It's so close. It's so close. But nonetheless, Ollie Bearman's special. We got a really special rookie class. You could probably make a highlight video for every single one of these drivers, but I want to know what the TLPs think. Let me know down in the comments below. Speaking of Franco Colapinto, teased it a little bit, but we got to talk about this. My big question, who the hell is going to be driving the Alpine opposite of Pierre Gasly in 2026? It's a very underwhelming season for the French back team, currently in last place by a wide margin in the Constructors' Championship. There's a lot of questions about Alpine's future as we move forward into 2026, but most notably, and the highlight of this video, of this segment, who the hell is driving the second Alpine in 2026? Pierre Gasly signed the contract extension. It's going to tie him to Alpine through 2028. He's going to be the face of this team for the foreseeable future. But things have been really rocky on the other side of the garage since he joined in 2023. He was alongside Esteban Ocon in 2024. 2025, Ocon leaves, of course, goes to Haas. This year, he's seen Jack Doohan get benched pretty quickly and then paired with Franco Colapinto ever since Imola. And there's a fair amount of uncertainty for 2026 and beyond. So here's my quick 3 on who I think is going to be driving the pink and blue Alpine starting in 2026. We got to start with the incumbent. We got to start with Franco Colapinto because Colapinto's case for driver 2 next year has been kind of coming together of late. I've given him a lot of crap in the other segment. I understand that. But finishing ahead of Gasly 3 out of the last 6 weekends, so a 50% hit rate if you just count these last 6. And whether there were some team orders or not, the results are still the results. It would go to show that Colapinto has begun to settle in with Alpine since the midseason switch. It would go to show that he does have some comfortability when the setup's right, when things are moving his direction, he can deliver. Unfortunately, not into the points, but as far as results are concerned, he's certain to hit some of these benchmarks that I think they had for him. And Colapinto does have some strong points finishes on his resume. After he took over last year midseason for another driver in Logan Sargent, from Williams, he tallied 5 points in Azerbaijan and the United States Grand Prix weekend with some near points finishes as well. However, he does also own 3 DNFs out of the final 4 race weekends when he was driving the Blue Williams last year. And he's had his moments, of course, this season as well. His counterpart to start the year, Jack Doohan, had a major moment in Japan. So Alpine have had their fair share of notches in the F1 Constructors' Championship this year. Franco Colapinto is still a part of that. And unfortunately, not having points in a year that's been so full of parity with a number of Grand Prix Sundays that Colapinto has been a part of and Sprint Saturdays. It is kind of surprising at this stage of the year to have him not have a single point. All 20 points so far for Alpine have been scored by the one and only Pierre Gasly. And look, I get it. This thing's a freaking tractor. The Alpine this year is pretty to look at, but it is not something that the F1 broadcast, it's not something that F1 TV or Sky Sports have spent a lot of time watching this year if it's not being lapped by the front runners in orange or in blue or in silver or in red. It's been a rough year for Alpine, and Alpine fans, if you're out there, let me know down in the comments below. We love having you here, but it's been rough. As far as what they're going to do in 2026, you have to hope that they're going to get somebody who can at least be a little bit more stable. My alternative to this at the moment, though, one of the other drivers, that I think that Alpine should consider is somebody that's in their network right now. An F2 option that, people who watched Formula 2 over the last couple of years might have been familiar with, maybe even going back to F3. Estonian driver, Paul Aron. Aron was a rapid contender in Formula 2 in 2024 with High Tech GP, finished his season in third place in F3 the year prior as well. Finished in F2, in third place as well. So back-to-back P3s to finish seasons. He's a former Mercedes junior, tallied third place behind Gabriel Bortoleto, mind you, and Isaac Hadjar, two guys who were promoted to F1 in a year that was incredibly competitive with finishes along the way. But he was driving alongside Gabriel Bortoleto, again, Isaac Hadjar, Franco Colapinto, who is currently in F1, like I had mentioned extensively, Kimi Antonelli, and Ollie Bearman. That 2024 F2 championship was very interesting to watch. I watched most of it. Paul Aron was fighting at or near the front pretty regularly. And he's performed well in tests for Alpine, as well as a test with the Stake F1 group at the British Grand Prix. But Paul Aron was driving the Alpine as recently as Mexico City this past weekend. And watching him in F2, seeing bits of what he's done in F3, I think Aron is worth a shot. I think if they were to make this decision, a lot of people would be like, who? But if you've watched this kid, he's got some pace, man. He's got some pace. And he, like any young driver, he's going to have his share of mistakes. He's going to have DNFs. He's going to have crashes. He's going to have procedural issues. He's going to have moments. But if you're doubting what Franco Colapinto is giving you, if you're looking for a young upstart to really invest in, to give an opportunity to, as Alpine have been willing to do, because again, prior to Franco Colapinto having Jack Doohan in the car for a number of Grand Prix, finished last year in Abu Dhabi, and then had, I think, 5 to 6 races this year before they made the switch. They've been willing to give young guys chances. If they're going to do it again, which, whoever the decision maker is going to be at this stage, because Alpine have had quite a bit of turnover, but whatever they decide, I think that Paul Aron, he deserves that shot. There's something about him. Just watching him at High Tech GP last year, he was able to do some things that, at least in my opinion, were pretty impressive. I think he had a really solid win in Qatar, if I'm not mistaken. It was a really tough championship, of course, towards the end, a little bit anticlimactic with stalling out of Isaac Hadjar in Abu Dhabi. Gabriel Bortoleto, bringing it home to win that championship. But it was a really special rookie class. A lot of guys, of course, 5 rookies this year. I think Aron in 2026 being one of those potential rookies, I would be okay with it. He's solid. Check him out. Of course, young drivers have mistakes. They have their moments, but the kid, I don't know, man. There's something about him. I think he's got raw pace. Seeing what he's able to do in the car, in my opportunities to watch what he's done, I've been pretty impressed. Finally, one more driver to highlight. I mentioned it before, so if you're a veteran of the TLPs, if you're a TLP, you're an avid listener, avid watcher, we appreciate you. But more recently, I've been bringing up this as an option when it comes to Alpine in 2026. It's Yuki Tsunoda. More formally, I'm bringing it to the table one more time. Yuki Tsunoda. He's another Red Bull alumni, so to speak, currently driving the Red Bull opposite of Max Verstappen. So he would join that pipeline, alongside Pierre Gasly, alongside guys like Alex Albon, Checo Perez coming back onto the grid next year. He would be another one of the former Red Bull drivers to have made a jump to go elsewhere. Maybe the grass is greener elsewhere when you're not driving under Christian Horner. Lauren Mecky's doing good things, but, he's not going to be a world beater. But he's a veteran driver that I think for Alpine is a very safe option for the team going into another regulation. 2026 is going to be a huge overhaul. They're going to have a lot of changes. They're in that Mercedes power unit in the car, of course, because Renault decided they were going to stop building their own power units beginning in 2026. A lot of changes are coming in Alpine, probably top down. Questions about Flavio Briatore as the team leader, team boss, team principal, etc. Who is going to be leading this team into the future? What is Alpine look like going into the future? Do they decide to keep this team going? Renault, the parent company. But Yuki Tsunoda, if you can answer one question, is that he's incredibly liked by the fan base. He's a solid driver, generally speaking, especially for what Alpine might be looking for. Incredibly marketable, well-loved, well-liked within the paddock, and he has great chemistry inter-team with your face, Pierre Gasly. And look, while this move might be a little bit shocking at first, surface level, first impressions from, average Formula One fans might be a little bit maybe surprised by the move, by the signing. Look, again, I think it's a super safe decision. It's not going to be expecting too much out of 2026. It's getting your feet wet with the new regulation, try to keep building your infrastructure, have a couple of guys in the seats that are really going to be at least very stable for the year. And if he underperforms, you're back to where you were before. And then maybe you consider a Paul Aron. Maybe you reconsider a Franco Colapinto at that stage. Maybe you have somebody else coming through the pipeline. But I think Tsunoda in the right machinery can land you some points. I think he's a safe pick. He's not going to crash the car 10 times a season, a little dramatic, but he's a really safe pick. He brings a lot of great personality. I think for Yuki Tsunoda, this is his opportunity to stay in Formula One, because I just don't feel like Red Bull is going to be jumping at him to stick around. There have been a little bit of conversations about that, leaking here and there about their considerations to keep Yuki. And while I think that it would be interesting, and I think it might make things very curious, Isaac Hadjar has just performed so well, especially with a new regulation. I've talked about this at length, that with questions about Max Verstappen's future, maybe you bring in Isaac Hadjar with this new regulation, with this new base level car, and start building the team a little bit more towards, your young French driver. Just saying, it's possible if you're Red Bull. But this is the Alpine section. I want to know what you guys think is going to happen with this Alpine second seat next year. Is it going to be Franco Colapinto? Is it going to be Paul Aron? Is it going to be Yuki Tsunoda? Do you guys think it could be somebody else that we're not talking about, that isn't a part of any of these conversations? Maybe you're a little more learned on this topic. Maybe you have some more insights. Maybe you're an insider. Maybe you are with Alpine and you know something I don't know. And if you do, DM me. I got my social medias down at the bottom of the screen below, along with my colleague, co-host, Khaki Kevin Walker. The TikTok, the Instagram, all that stuff is right down below. So feel free to give us a follow on any of those channels if you haven't already, TLPs. Look, with all that being said, it's a smooth transition. That's going to do it for this episode of the Lap Podcast. I do want to thank you guys for watching or listening all the way to the end. If you have not already joined the TLPs, join, subscribe. It costs nothing. You can follow us on all the social medias. They're down below, free of charge. All you guys are going to do is hit the subscribe button, and then that's the rest of your day. You just keep watching at your leisure. We'd certainly appreciate it. We're aiming to get to 100 subscribers on the YouTube before the end of this year. And you subscribing, I know YouTube also has a new hype feature. Feel free to hit that hype. Put us in front of more Formula One fans like yourself. Share us with your friends, your family, your colleagues, people that love Formula One. Put us in front of them. Help us build this thing up. We are your Destination Formula One podcast. Make us your friends and your family's Destination Formula One podcast. Until next time, though, I'm Tristan Rines signing off. Be safe, be well, and let's go racing.